joining us for this special session on Karma of Forgiveness with Suzy Singh, who's a best-selling author, emotional well-being, and mental health coach. So we're very excited to do this session today. I know this is one of those topics that's been on my mind, especially since we are at the start of the new year, 2021, and of course are trying to bring about changes in ourselves. So a little bit about me. I'm Sukirti Gupta. I'm one of the co-founders of Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company that was co-founded by me and by Meeta Gudgutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts. We wanted to create a no judgment platform and a network of women for women. Sipping Thoughts reaches out to 2.5 million women on a monthly basis. So we're very excited. You can check us out on our website. You can check out Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find some content that tickles your fancy. So today, but we are talking about the how and the why of forgiveness. In this session, Suzy will talk about why forgiveness does not come to us naturally. At least I think for me, it doesn't. Why some people are more forgiving than others. What really is forgiveness? And the reasons for forgiving. And more importantly, how can we actually forgive? So, Suzy will also share with us a daily forgiveness technique with us that we can adapt easily. So I know a lot of you know Suzy. I know I don't need to give her introduction. She is, though, the best-selling author of the international book, Seven Karma Codes. It was recently launched in Italian and Serbian. Suzy has been in the emotional well-being and mental health coach. She is a certified clinical hypnotherapist from the US and a former general manager of Lintas Advertising. She's a board of advisors member with the mental health NGO We Listen. Besides offering personal therapy, counseling, and mentoring to clients worldwide, Suzy writes extensively for various publications on health and well being, speaks on wellness summits and webinars internationally, and facilitates workshops on karma. She also has an exclusive YouTube channel. Please do check it out, where she shares in depth perspectives that solve many modern day dilemmas. She's also a contributing author to the book Holistic Wellness in the New Age. Suzy, welcome to Sipping Thoughts. We're excited to have you here.
I'm equally excited, Sukriti. I'm really looking forward to this one.
So Suzy, I have a big question. And of course, the one you were following a typical type of corporate track like many of us do. You were in Lintas, you were doing advertising and marketing, and then you went into this health and wellness sphere. Please tell us a little bit about how this change happened for you.
So I think there were two primary reasons, and they happened to coincide at the same time. The first reason was that I had this parallel, secret, deeply spiritual life that very few people knew about, but I had been intensely involved with spirituality since I was 15 years of age. And the second aspect was that I was beginning to find that the veil of the bling in corporate life, the glamour in corporate life was slowly dissolving. What became apparent to me was that basic instincts were driving most people in the corporate arena. And the two basic instincts were fear and the hunger for power. And when you look at fear and hunger for power, what really happens is that you are participating in a really mean world. I was very keen to explore the higher motivations in humans because when I looked at my bosses and my super bosses, I found that they all had the same kind of fears. And I said, this is not where I want to end up in my life. I wanted to create a world where I could learn to be altruistic and then I could gift that or give that or share that with my fellow people. And that is the reason that when my spiritual yearning came into a blossoming, and I found this simultaneous understanding of the corporate environment, I said, it's time to leave and it's time to go reinvent myself, be in my purpose. And now that I've spent almost as long in the wellness field as I had been in corporate India, which is about 20 years in both fields, I'm ready to give back because I've spent these last 20 years discovering those human motivations that can help and lead us to live a more compassionate and altruistic life.
So you spoke about one of the dilemmas that we face, of course, is fear. But what are some of the other modern dilemmas that you're seeing, especially now in these corona times that you are seeing?
So Sukriti, what I find is that most of us live our lives quite like a well polished teak cupboard. The cupboard is tightly locked and it looks really glossy and shiny and nice on the outside. But you open the cupboard and you find that it's messy and disorganized inside. We are like that. And what happened during the pandemic is that people were, they'd locked up their lives and they were running around being really busy doing things. The pandemic gave them a time to open up their cupboards of their lives and to examine their relationships. And what I found in this last 1 year, that people became very aware of the cracks in their relationships, the problems that they were having, they couldn't escape them anymore. And so human relationships and the problems in them, the lack of compatibility, the finger pointing, the blaming, the complaining, the criticizing, all of this really came to the surface during this period. We also had a lot of people breaking up and marriages breaking up and all sorts of relationship linked problems. The other thing was, this is your relationship with the outer world, but it also brought to light your relationship with your own self, which is why we found that the incidence of depression during this period became very high. The two aspects that people were really struggling with was guilt and shame, the feeling of not being worthy enough, not being good enough. And I think that got amplified with the job losses and, the other kinds of grief, people losing loved ones and all of that during this period. So to really sum it up, it was your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the world, two key areas that we, in our normal day-to-day lives in the past, pre-pandemic, never really stopped to examine and reform.
Yes, definitely. But when you and I were talking, and especially when we were talking about what should be the topic for today, why did you think that forgiveness? Because I know there's so many topics that people think about, especially about depression, mental health. But why was forgiveness the one that touched you and you said, this is the one that we must talk about today?
I'm so glad you asked this question, Sukriti, because yes, this is a very unlikely topic, right? And there are four key reasons why I wanted to do this. I really, really wanted to do this. The first reason is that, when somebody who does not understand jewelry chances upon, let's say, 100-carat emerald, he just thinks that it is, what is this transparent green stone? It's meaningless. It's a transparent green stone. He has no clue about the value of that stone. And forgiveness is pretty much like that. It hasn't been given the importance. We haven't understood its value at all. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it, so that we all get attuned to, or at least start opening up to this idea of what is the value of forgiveness. And some years ago, I think I had pretty much this kind of response to forgiveness myself. I remember that I was hosting a workshop at one of the international spiritual festivals, and somebody else was hosting one on forgiveness. And I was wondering, I sort of shrugged my shoulders and said, "What's the big deal? I mean, we all know how to forgive, right? We know it."
Sorry, and that's
So yeah, it's what's the big deal about forgiveness? Until I encountered it myself and I found its power and I worked very intensely with it. And so I want to today actually help activate that desire. What I received, I want to give back to all the viewers who are here today. The second thing is that forgiveness has huge curative powers. And I will talk about it a bit later, but I want to mention this, that in a lot of cases, people suffering from cancers have gone into automatic remission when they have worked with forgiveness. People have been able to avoid heart attacks. There are a whole range of health-related benefits that come to you. So it's like a magic key to well-being and health. And we don't really understand the potency and the power of this magic key. The third aspect is it's a karmic fast tracker. A lot of people are struggling with karma and are struggling with the fact that because they are unforgiving, they don't realize that they are stretching out their karmic redemption. Let's say that they were supposed to suffer for a period of 2 years. Because they are unforgiving, they stretch that 2 years can sometimes become 20 years. And your redemption is not complete. But if you are willing to understand the laws of karma, if you understand how forgiveness works, you can really fast track the dissolution or the neutralization of that karma. And finally, I think the fourth important reason is a planetary one. At this point in time, when I think we've had 1 year of a lot of difficulties, a lot of people have lost loved ones. We find on the political scenario, there is a lot of hate that is, pointed in the direction of America and in the direction of China. I think it is really important for us to understand that when we send out this kind of hate feelings, we are creating more violence and terror on the planet. And that any violence that happens, we have a personal responsibility. We're personally invested in causing it. And so also, if we understand how forgiveness works, we can contribute to planetary peace. That is very important. So from a personal to a familial to a global level, I think forgiveness has huge value.
Well, thank you, Susie. And now I know we're dying to know those keys. So I hand it over to you and let's start to get into the session.
So Linda's 19-year-old son was tragically murdered, and the murderer was sentenced to life imprisonment. For 10 long years, Linda continued to visit the prison only to ensure that he was not released on parole, and revenge had become the purpose of her life. When I meet people in my clinical work, I find that a lot of them struggle. They feel very challenged with forgiveness. They're not aware of this, of course, because when they come in with different kind of problems. But when we start doing the therapy work, when we do the deep diving, then people realize that they're stuck at some point. Now, that point could be that they're not able to forgive an offender who violated them sexually or otherwise, or they are stuck because somebody betrayed them. It could be a lover, it could be someone who abandoned them, or even worse, it could be a parent that they are very angry with. And it's surprising, I meet people in their 40s and their 50s who are still not able to forgive their father or their mother for not loving them in the way that they wanted to be loved, or not being able to protect them or safeguard them, or not be able to give them the kind of life that they thought they deserved. And so they continue to hold on to that, and it creates a whole host of health problems for these people. So the question is, what makes us so very unforgiving? Dr. Fred Luskin, who is the director of the Forgiveness Project at Stanford, has spent the last 35 years studying and researching forgiveness. And I studied some of his research and found some really valuable insights into understanding the human physiopsychology. How does this work for us? And I want to ask our viewers who are present here now, let's imagine a situation that you have gone to a party that you're invited to, and that evening, there is some other invitee there who decides to insult you. What is going to be your mental response? What will you want to do to that person? I want everyone to participate in this and to please write your responses in the chat boxes, because when you engage with it, you are going to find some amazing things about your own mind. I can see people are saying they'll be hurt, they'll be angry, they'll be irritated, but I want you to go one step further. Somebody is humiliating you publicly. What is your mind going to want to do? Listen to the question carefully. Of course, you may ignore them externally, but what do you want to do to them inside your head? That's pretty. What do you want to do?
Bash them up.
One big bash. You want to give them one big bash. You want to give it back to them, right? You want to hurt them. Now, of course, we are all socially trained, so we may do the right thing. But in our heads, we've already decided that we want to retaliate. We want to hit out at them. Somebody is saying, yes, Mukta, give it back to them. Everybody they want to give them back. Apurva says, I want to give a big, huge blow. Of course, that's absolutely right. And the reason for that is Shalini is saying, I want to hurt them too. Why do you want to do this? I'm so glad that everybody is participating fully and is being totally honest, because, I want to work with you. I want to handhold you through this process of how we can learn to forgive. And for that, your participation is really important. We are hardwired for revenge. From the early times when man was primitive and we used to move around in little groups just for safety's sake, if there was any infighting that broke out, it would challenge the integrity of the group. And so that person would be beaten up and would be punished. Now, through eons, this eye for an eye and nose for a nose has happened, and it has got hardwired into the way humans work. So biologically, we are given to retaliation. Now, I'm going to ask you a second question. Suppose you're a 5-year-old and you're walking around the street and a dog comes along and bites you and you're bitten down to the bone, and it's really painful. You have to be rushed to the hospital and you have to have to go through those terrible injections for many days. What is the likelihood of what kind of a relationship are you going to have with dogs when you grow up?
A lot of fear.
Lot of fear. Himali Dharmesh, very scared. Yeah. So you're going to be fearful, you're going to be petrified, you're going to want to avoid them, right? Now, this is the second way that our brains are designed to maximize the remembrance of suffering, because this ensures that we are protected from danger in the future. Many women who have been sexually abused in their childhood, when they come into therapy, what I find is that a lot of them are unable to build trusting relationships with men. A lot of them don't want to get married. Many of them are married and not able to engage in intimacy. And surprisingly, I've known of many people who have been married for up to 15 years and have not consummated their marriage. Why do you think this is happening? There is a common cause across all of them. The forgiveness is not complete. They believe that the offender who did this to them does not deserve their forgiveness. And what they don't realize is that unless they forgive him, they're going to continue to bleed. They're going to continue to hurt about that occasion. And then they are not able to go back to forming harmonious relationships in their present life. So we can see how these are two opposite poles. One is the protective instinctive mode, and we have a protection bias inbuilt into our physiology. On the other hand, it also beyond a point becomes destructive for us because it does not allow us to engage in harmonious relationships. There is a third factor, which is more of a psychological, not so much of a neurological factor. And this is very interesting. Most of our attention and care is self-centered upon ourselves. The net result is that we tend to we magnify our suffering and we minimize the suffering of others. There was a very interesting experience I had some time ago. I had gone with a group of friends for lunch, and the conversation just had tended to veer towards, the troubles that we'd all gone through in our lives. And I was expecting a very empathetic sharing over there. But to my surprise, what I witnessed was that there was this undercurrent of competitiveness where each one was trying to vie with the other, trying to say, my pain is bigger than yours. I have suffered more than you have suffered, And here there was a clear indication of the fact that even empathy does not come to us naturally. We believe that my suffering is more. And when we believe that, we justify why I should not forgive another person. Because मुझे चोट ज़्यादा पहुंची है ना, उसे तो कम चोट पहुंची, तो मैं उसे क्यों forgive करूं? उसको forgive करना चाहिए मुझे. So that rationale is built up in our minds. Then there is this whole idea of how our memories are actually formed. The mind forms memories through association. So let's say that we meet someone and we have a bad experience with this person. Your brain decides that I want to retain this memory for future safety, and it decides to hashtag that person's name and says, hashtag so-and-so, danger, avoid him, and drops it into a subconscious basket in your mind. Now, whenever this man's name or face will pop up in your head, you will immediately have a habitual negative response to him because of your negativity bias. And even if this person has not done anything, or even if this person has just not seen you, you will think he ignored me because you have a negative bias towards that person. And you're not going to be able to forgive him. Then there is another very interesting thing. And here is a question that I'm going to address to the audience again. Acha, mujhe ye batao, which is an easier emotion for you to deal with? Is it anger? Does anger come to you more naturally, or does shame come to you more naturally? Which do you find easier to work through or to express? Yeah, I find lots of people actually mentioning anger. You know, it's easier for us to get angry because it gives us a sense of power over the other person. And you feel that, you know, if I'm angry and hostile, it means that whatever harm he's done, let him not think that I'm weak. Whereas shame is a very personal and private experience, and it involves our vulnerability. And we want to avoid any experience where we feel vulnerable. Because it is difficult to work with our internal experiences of grief, loss, shame, guilt. So we prefer to be angry and hostile, and we manage difficult situations like that rather than working through the forgiveness, because forgiveness involves engaging with our vulnerable relationships, with our vulnerable emotions. And lastly, we've talked about 5 reasons why we are biologically not attuned to forgiving. There is a 6th, very simple and important one. And I want to ask the audience, is there anyone in the audience today who has been taught how to forgive with all the details and the understanding of the exact process involved in forgiveness? कोई भी एक जना है इस audience में? Has anyone ever been taught? Now, this is the most interesting thing. You know, whether it is our teachers, whether it's our parents, authority figures, we are prescribed forgiveness. But we are not taught how to forgive. So how are we expected to forgive? And the other interesting thing is that humans learn through imitation more than they learn through instruction. So if our parents tell us, "Bachche, tumhe forgiving hona chahiye," we are not going to learn it. We are going to learn it through imitation. And the world is largely unforgiving. So the experiences that we are going to encounter is more unforgiving people in our life. And there are very rare and few experiences where people have very gentle and kind and forgiving and compassionate towards us. So as a result, we never learn this skill. So the first point I want you to understand is, if there's anybody here who believes that forgiveness will arise naturally in my heart, जब मेरे दिल से ये बात निकलेगी कि मैं उनको forgive कर दूं, तब मैं उनको forgive करूंगी, तो वो कभी होगा ही नहीं. It was never going to happen, because it involves swimming upstream. The human nature, given its current status of evolution and development, is not pro-forgiveness. We are not designed to do that yet, because we haven't developed the super brain or the third brain, which I'll talk about in a bit. And what therefore happens is that unless I make a firm intention, this is something that I'm going to learn. Just like I have to make up my mind that I'm going to learn how to drive a car, and then I have to go take training, I have to learn how to drive, I have to practice it every day. Like that, I have to understand first, make a commitment. Have the intention, make a commitment, then start small forgiving act, little offenses every day. When somebody, your maid brings you a cup of coffee and it tastes horrible, instead of snapping back at her, please be forgiving. So start with very small things with forgiveness, and slowly through practice, through repetition, we can build up our forgiveness muscle so that we can then forgive even bigger and bigger offenses against us. So I hope we all get that forgiveness is not part of our nature. इसके लिए मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, समय लगाना पड़ेगा, and we will have to swim against the tide of our nature. Now, I'd like to ask some of you, how many of you have ever observed little babies playing in a group? Have you ever seen little babies playing in a group?
Yes, absolutely.
So Some babies are very comfortable sharing their toys. If some child grabs their toy, they will happily get busy with another toy, or they will engage, and they are very must. But the other children, you try grabbing a toy from them, and that child can get very hostile. That child can even hit another child, or can pull their hair, or can tug at them. Now, my question to the audience is, why do you think this happens? ये तो एक छोटा सा बच्चा है. Why do you think this is occurring? I mean, this child has not even gone through life's experiences and through cognition. So what makes one person or one baby more forgiving than another baby? What could be the reason? Yeah, so we have Rima saying instinct, possessiveness. Kalpana Shah says past karma, and that is absolutely right. The only understanding, the logical understanding, is that these are karmic tendencies flowing in from previous lifetimes. There is one other factor which I will talk about a little later, but the karmic tendencies. So let's say that we have been very unforgiving in our past lives, or we've encountered many difficulties and we chose not to forgive in our past life. That tendency is going to move into this life, and we will be born with an unforgiving tendency. So we are starting out with a minus on forgiveness. And there are some others who will start out with a plus on forgiveness. They are better equipped than we are. It also means that हमें ज़्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी. We will have to work harder in this lifetime. The second thing, now this child is beginning to grow up. What kind of parenting style does this child receive? And here again, we have found in research that children who have very emotionally attuned, psychologically attuned parents who are very loving and forgiving themselves, who are willing to spend and invest time with their children, they tend to grow up to be more happy, more well-adjusted, they're more forgiving, they have a better capacity to let drop difficulties or drop conflicts and get on with life. But children who have either been neglected or abused, or those who have not had a close relationship with the parents, those children can become very vengeful. They want to hurt others. They're very ruminative. सोचते रहेंगे अपने दिमाग में, and they're insecurely attached. Now we can see how the parenting has an effect. And here itself starts the hatred towards the parent. Over the years, it will get disguised, because there is this whole thing about your own cultural training also and conditioning कि अपने मम्मी पापा को respect देनी है. So we will disguise this and we will push it down into the subconscious mind. But we can see that if a child has not received the love from the parent, there will be an inherent anger towards the parent itself and an unforgiveness towards the parent. Then we go on to the second aspect, which I said I will come to, the influence, which is genetics. So एक तो karmic tendency है, और दूसरा the effect of genetics. Now, if you have had forefathers who've been through very difficult experiences and they have not worked through them. Let's take, for example, that your forefathers were in the partition and they had a tremendous loss of property, of wealth, maybe their loved ones were killed, and they were really shattered during the partition and they were not able to make peace with that event. That grudging, unforgiving DNA will have traveled down to you. Just reflect on this point for a moment. And I'm going to ask you the question because it has an implication. How many of you are willing to put in the hard work to learn how to forgive and to practice that regularly in order to make the lives of your children easier? How many of you are willing to do that? I want you all to raise your hands and to make the commitment, because, we're working on this together. I made that commitment a few years ago, about 5 years ago, and I have been working consistently because I don't want to pass this legacy on to my children of unforgiveness and burden them with this disadvantage in life. It just means that they're going to be more miserable if they don't learn how to forgive. Your DNA is going to be transferred to your children. This is the study of epigenetics. It's very recent. It is only as recent as 2012, and scientists are beginning to discover this now, that people in the Holocaust, the kind of struggles they went through, and if they were not able to forgive, then the great-grandchildren are also suffering that right now. So if we are willing to do the work, the hard work, if we are willing to transform our difficult experiences, forgive the person who we feel terrible about in our lives. Of course, it's difficult. It's very hurtful. Somebody has caused me a lot of trauma. Somebody has caused me a lot of pain. I am expected to forgive them. It's not going to come naturally and easily. And we've discussed why it won't come naturally. But if you do this work, the disadvantages will not be borne by the progeny. Now we come to the third aspect, which is your beliefs and attitudes and the conditioning that is given to the child. So we've seen the effect of what happens at birth, your karmic tendencies. Then we've seen how your parenting will affect you to make you more or less forgiving. We've seen, depending on whether you have a grudging DNA or not, what's going to happen to you. And now let's talk about what happens to the conditioning as a child is growing up. I'm sure most parents tell their children and prescribe to their children, be forgiving. There'll be the odd parent who will also turn around and say, when the child is bullied in school, child will come home and the parent will say, why didn't you hit him back if he hit you? But most people, by and large, today are becoming more aware and they'll want to teach them more gentler practices about being more mindful. But what are the parents doing themselves? Because like I mentioned a while ago, children learn through imitation. They do not learn through instruction. Now, if the parents are fighting, if the parents after a fight are having these long periods of not speaking to each other, there is a lot of passive bitterness between the two of them. There is a lot of name calling there. If there is a lot of animosity and very tense atmosphere in the house, what do you think the child is going to learn? He's going to think it's okay to be unforgiving. This is natural. Mummy papa kar sakte hain to main bhi kar sakta hu, yahi sahi hoga. So they end up learning to be more unforgiving. There is also the impact of religiosity or spirituality. So families in which there is a more religious atmosphere or there is talk about spirituality and spiritual awareness, because all of these faiths and paths, they talk about forgiveness, those children are exposed to that idea and therefore likely to be more forgiving than those kids that are brought up in an environment where there is a belief that there is no higher power. And finally, the sum total of all of these experiences creates the individual's personality. And there again, there is an incidence in research which finds that children who are more, or adults who are more agreeable, who are more outgoing, who are more friendly, who are more conscientious, they tend to be more forgiving as compared to people who are narcissistic, who have a sense of entitlement, and who are more hostile. I'm sure those of you viewers who are from Delhi, you would have always heard this, and we see this in the movies when everybody says, "Tumhe pata hai mera baap kaun hai?" That's called sense of entitlement, you know.
आप
So
जानते हो मैं
those
कौन
people are less forgiving because they think they're above forgiveness somehow. I'd now like to read to you a very interesting case from my book, The Seven Karma Codes, about forgiveness and karma and how that plays out. And the reason I chose to do this reading is because when we do past life regressions, often we find situations where a person who's had a very difficult relationship visits a past life during the regression and suddenly experiences a transformation towards in the relationship. What causes it? How does that come about? Is something that this case will make it really clear to you how those experiences move through two different lives. A middle-aged woman who, on discovering that a close friend of hers was having a clandestine affair with her husband, became driven to comprehend her karmic influences. On accessing her Akashic records, we found a past life in which she had been abandoned as a young girl child after her village was attacked and plundered by soldiers. Helpless and alone, she grew up to be a woman of pleasure, living off affluent men in that life. And this points to the tendency towards dependence and helplessness in her soul. At one of the many fairs where nobility and commoners mingled. She met a rich man who took her home as his mistress, and she spent the rest of her life with him in his opulent castle. She commits the karmic error of coveting another woman's spouse and violating her rights. Unfortunately, the man was already married, and to keep his not so pretty wife out of the way, he imprisoned her permanently. The anguished wife came to resent this mistress deeply, feeling vengeful about the fact that she had stolen the life that was meant for her. At death, the singular thought that obsessed the wife's mind was that she must avenge her pain. In this life, the noble's wife has incarnated as my client's extramarital love interest, indicative of karmic balancing so that the soul can experience the anguish of losing a spouse's love. The knowledge of her past life made it possible for the aggrieved lady to commence the process of forgiving both the erring friend and her husband. She is driven to develop the virtue of forgiveness and compassion. While she has only made a beginning, in time to come, it is possible that she will come to fully accept her circumstances and build a new life for herself. She has three possible choices ahead of her: remain stuck in blaming and shaming those involved, thereby deepening her hatred for them and intensify her own suffering. This will only increase the burden of her karma. Forgive all involved and renegotiate trust with her spouse. That's the second option. And if he is willing to mend his ways, they may rebuild their broken marriage. This will refine her nature and teach her forgiveness and fortitude. She will also sow seeds of good karma. And the third choice is to forgive and seek a divorce. This will teach her to stand on her own feet and become independent and self-reliant. Not only will she overcome her past life tendency of depending on others for survival, she will also build self-confidence and courage. So as you can see, forgiveness is a choice. It's not mandatory. You don't have to do it, but it is a choice for peace that you make for your own self. It is a voluntary, unconditional gift of peace. Three things happen when you decide that I'm going to forgive someone. First is that there is a change in your cognition. How you view the event, the hurtful event, begins to start shifting. Secondly, your behavior becomes gentler and kinder. And thirdly, your difficult emotions of anger and grief inside, they become more positive. Now, there are some people who put conditions on forgiveness, and they will say, I will forgive so and so when justice is served. Or I will forgive someone when the hurt that I have felt, they go through a similar sort of pain. Or I will forgive them when the harm they've done to me, they make good that harm. Now, whenever you put a condition to forgiveness, what you're actually doing is you're hanging yourself on the cross. And you're saying, I will continue to bleed till this other person decides to come take me off the cross. That individual who has hurt you, you're relying on him to rescue you now, which is a completely silly thing to do. You need to rescue yourself. You need to get yourself off that hook or off that cross that you have placed yourself upon. Forgiveness is an internal process. It leads to a change in the story that you have about what happened. That's the very first thing, and that's the tough part. Whenever something happens, now let's say something happened 5 years ago. In these 5 years, you've thought about that several times, and you have created many stories, some of which are not even true, but because you've repeatedly mentioned them to yourself, you have started believing in those stories. It is recalling those stories that is causing all of that biochemical reaction, which causes your anger, grief, pain, and then finally leads to illness. So it shifts your narrative or your story. It alters your attitude and makes you more compassionate, more empathetic. It also shifts your worldview. You know, when you are unforgiving or something bad has happened to you, you start seeing the whole world as your enemy. You think everybody is out to hurt you, and you become overcautious and vigilant, which means all the time in your body, there's cortisol running through you. It becomes your natural state. And this is part of the reason why people have heart attacks. They think they're not stressed because they've got used to being in a worried state of mind. And finally, of course, your very difficult emotions are also transformed into gentler emotions. You know, this lady, Linda, I spoke about at the beginning of our talk. At the end of 10 years, she found that her hair had started falling. She developed serious stomach ailments. She was deeply depressed and a whole host of other health issues. That's when she did realize that revenge was not working for her. And she then continued to go to the prison, but her objective was not revenge anymore. She went there to forgive her son's murderer. Forgiveness is pro-immunity. And like I mentioned, at a physical level, it is known to avoid cardiac arrests. It is known to heal cancers, to lower blood pressure. And those people who suffer from fibromyalgia and a whole lot of other myalgias, unexplained aches and pains, it heals those too. Now, this is an important one because fibromyalgia has no cure in the world. And so if people can understand it's their unforgiveness that is causing the ache and pain, then practicing forgiveness becomes their medicine. At a mental level, it reduces depression. Those people, how many people here suffer from insomnia? Raat ko so nahi pate. It heals insomnia, your forgiveness. And it also heals your constant negative thinking, which is called rumination. Negative overthinking, mind chalta hi rehta hai har samay. At an emotional level, it heals your grief, your hostility, and your bitterness. At a karmic level, there are many advantages again. And the most important karmic benefit is that when you are vengeful, now even if you're a very conscious person and a good person, and we all believe कि हम तो बड़े अच्छे हैं, when we are a good person, so Kriti, I will come to how to forgive. I want to be able to establish these aspects. So we are very good, but when we are vengeful, we want to hurt other people. We want to cause them pain, and that creates bad karma. We want to be able to vent our anger with the divine, and then that starts creating a sense of separation. Your spiritual progress becomes limited. Your virtues are not built because we are here to develop virtues. We are here to become better humans. Whatever we were at the beginning of our life, we hope that we will exit life in a better way. And we are not able to go through any redemption, even not find our life's purpose in some cases. The other day, I was speaking to Asha Devi, the mother of Nirbhaya, and she was mentioning to me, she said, even though I went through this very difficult and traumatic experience, but it has brought me to my life's purpose because today I'm committed to saving women from crime. So we can see that sometimes it is these difficult experiences that lead us to our life's purpose itself. Then there is another very powerful reason. How are we doing on time, Sukriti?
17 minutes.
Pardon?
17.
Okay. Okay. So I think I need to hasten this a bit. You know, when we are unforgiving to others, we are unforgiving to ourselves. So what happens is we create this mountain of guilt inside of us. Unless we can learn to forgive the other person, we will never learn to forgive ourselves. And that is really, really important. Now, there may be 3 areas of forgiveness that we need to practice or work with.
Suzy,
One is
a question that has come up continuously. I think a lot of people have asked this, and you've just touched upon this, that I'm able to forgive others, but not forgive myself. So I would like you to please repeat what you've just said,
yeah,
because the question has come up quite a few times in the chat.
yeah. When we are not able to forgive others, see, unforgiveness is like a coin which has 2 sides. On the one side is I can't forgive others. And because I can't forgive others, it means I don't have a forgiveness muscle. That muscle is not well developed. It doesn't know how to operate. To activate or operate that muscle, I have to start forgiving other people. The minute I start forgiving other people, what I'm doing is the gateway opens into the new brain. which is the new brain here. This is the seat of kindness, forgiveness, empathy, compassion. And slowly I built my practice of forgiveness. Now, whenever something happens, my natural and spontaneous reaction would be, acha, theek hai, never mind. Forgive them. And then I'm able to forgive myself. You can't forgive yourself unless you build your muscle of forgiveness. And that is the way that you're able to forgive yourself and you're able to work through guilt. There are 3 areas of forgiveness that you'll need to work with. One is forgiving others, one is forgiving yourself, and one is forgiving God or nature, which is existential forgiveness. Now, how do you do this? There are 4 very important prerequisites for forgiveness. The first one is you cannot forgive anyone if you're in a stressed state of mind, because your physiology or your biochemistry will shut the door of the third brain or the super brain. Forgiveness is here. Iska darwaza hi band ho jata hai if you are stressed. So to open the gateway into your new brain from where you can connect with the ability to forgive, you have to decompress stress. How do you do that? Through diaphragmatic belly breathing. Now I want everybody to just practice what that really means is just place one hand on your lower abdomen and try and breathe deep into that abdomen where your hand is without moving your shoulders and chest. Now, if you continue to breathe like this for about 2 minutes, you'll suddenly find that your stress levels will start dropping. So this is opening the gateway into and accessing your forgiving brain. Then there is a second practice that you need. And while you're doing this, you can just follow it as I instruct you. You need to open the gateway to the heart. And we can do that by thinking of someone that we really, really love. Just bring to your mind's eye someone that you really love. Bring his face or some experience to your mind. And see what happens. Do you feel this expansion in your heart space, in your chest? It relaxes and opens up. So these 2 things, you need to open the key to the mind to de-stress you. You need to open the key to the heart because, our hearts are usually closed. We are so scared that somebody will say something rude. We live, like I said, in a mean world. And so we build walls around our heart. And we have to open both these 2 gateways to bring head and heart into coherence before we can initiate the practice of forgiveness. Now, there is a third aspect, which is we need to be able to think about and give up entitlement. How do we give up entitlement? When we believe that this person should not have hurt me, or when we believe that my marriage should be happy, where is the proof that your marriage should be happy? What if it is your karma where you have actually caused pain to somebody in a previous life and you have come back in this lifetime to make good that? So here you can see how you can balance your sense of entitlement and give it up by realizing that maybe I deserve this. There is no evidence to say that I am entitled to happiness in my life. And finally, the fourth aspect is learning to shift the story. So whatever may be our painful story about what happened, we ask ourselves, what else could it be? And we try to switch that story by stepping into the feet or into the shoes of the offender and saying, from his perspective, kya hua hoga? Usne aisa kyun kiya mere saath? What is the possibility of his provocation? Could I have done something to provoke him? So we can learn to switch our perspective. Now, there are 2 methods. And the first method is the reach method. I'm going to go a little fast because I know we have little time and I have lots to say. The reach method focuses forgiveness on the offender. It is an intellectual process. It is decisional. And REACH is an acronym which stands for R is recall the painful event. E is empathize with the person who has offended you, which is think about what kind of environment that person grew up in, think about what the provocation may have been, think about what problem they may have been going through, think about the fact that yaar galtiyan mujhse bhi hoti hain, so maybe he just committed an error and maybe this was a misjudgment on his part. So empathize with that person. A stands for give an altruistic gift of forgiveness to that person. How can we do this? We think about of a time when we have hurt somebody and we connect with that terrible feeling of guilt that we had when we hurt them. And then the sense of relief that we experienced when they forgive us. And now we pay forward a gift of that sense of relief to our offender. And C stands for committing to the forgiveness. I make a decision that I'm going to forgive and I'm going to stay committed to this forgiveness. And that works best when we actually tell somebody else. It's like a public pledging. So you tell somebody else, maybe a partner, or you tell a friend that, I have decided to forgive so-and-so person. Now you have anchored that forgiveness. And H says, hold on to that forgiveness whenever your doubts arise. The doubts will arise. Priya wants me to explain that again. A is giving an altruistic gift of forgiveness, which means I may have hurt somebody sometime. And when I hurt them, I felt very guilty. And I was really hoping and praying that this person would forgive me. When that person forgave me, I felt a deep sense of relief. Thank God he's forgiven me. That relief is the gift that I want to pay forward to my offender now. Can I give that altruistic gift to that person? So this is your decisional model or the reach model. There is a second method, which is the emotional model. This involves replacing your negative emotions with positive emotions. Now, let's say you have a lot of anger. Can you channelize that anger into your faith, strengthening your faith? Or you have a lot of sadness. Can you channelize that sadness into a sense of gratitude for the blessings that you have in your life? There is a third process, which is my favorite. It's called the 4D process. And the 4Ds stand for deep diving into your own pain first, making the decision to forgive. I don't want to suffer anymore. Then doing the hard work. And finally, deepening your understanding about what is it that I have learned from this experience. So I'm going to share a very personal and intimate experience at this point in time to help you see how I went through that experience. So there was some years ago, I had a very, very difficult equation with one relative. And I just could not understand why this person hated me so much. And I went through a lot of anguish and pain through it until I reached the point where I realized that I can't bear this anymore and I can't continue living like this. So one morning when I was sitting in meditation and I prayed to be shown a direction, I naturally regressed to a past life where I saw that I had denied this person in some way. And from that day, I took the decision that I am going to start doing the work of forgiving this person. So every morning for 8 months, I sat every morning. I would do the opening of the head and the opening of the heart with the two keys like I've described through the abdominal breathing and through the heart-centered opening of thinking of your loved one. I would imagine this person that she's standing in front of me and I would beam a lot of love from my heart chakra to her. And then I would say the Ho'oponopono prayer. Please forgive me. I am sorry. I thank you. I love you. And having done that, I would actually tell her that I don't know which lifetime and what I have done to you because I don't know the details. But if I have, I seek your forgiveness. And I am willing to forgive you for whatever pain you may have caused me in this lifetime. Now, initially, when I started doing this, it sounded very fake and unreal. I have to confess that. But as my practice grew roots, it became really deep and really authentic for me. I was sure that when I had completed that process and I was ready to do it for as long as it was required, I would see a shift. I expected that a relationship would change and become much better. But something really miraculous happened. This person was permanently removed from my life, and I didn't have to engage with her anymore. When I met her for the very last time, we had a very, very harmonious meeting. It was, I won't say it was loving, but it was very neutralized. And I felt very kindly towards her. She was very friendly towards me. And now, when I look back upon that experience, I realized that this individual was like a teacher. She taught me this capacity to access a part of my brain that has left me so much
Sorry.
more peaceful today, so much more peaceful. And I'm really grateful for that. I would now like to share with you one daily forgiveness exercise, because when you people start working with forgiveness, you'll find that the most tough part is shifting perspectives. And for that, the practice is the Japanese Naikan practice. Translated literally, it means inside looking. So it gives you an insight. And you simply ask yourself three reflective questions. The first question is, what have I received from this person? And you think of all the little things that you receive from them. Maybe, let's say you're thinking of your spouse and you think about, oh, he made me a cup of tea this morning. He put on the geyser, so I had hot water to bathe. Every little detail you will have to think of. The second question is, what have I given to this person? What are the things that I have done for this person? And this is a list you'll make with great ease, because hame, as people say, ginane ki aadat hoti hai. So we are very clear about the things we've done for others. It is harder to do the first list, where we have to become aware or awaken to the things that they do for us. And the third question is, what troubles and difficulties have I caused this person? Now, here again, to just share with you very quickly the power of the Naikan practice. Last week, I was having a really rushed morning, and my husband asked me for some documents. And when you're feeling very rushed, you get very snappy. And I was about to snap back at him, but because I'd done the Naikan practice in the morning, I didn't say anything. I was repeating my Naikan practice then. I suddenly realized that he does so much for me, and I probably do less for him than he does for me. And he was asking me for those documents because I had requested help on a certain matter. And here I was wanting to snap back at him. You will not believe it. In an instant and very magically, this very agitated mind had shifted into this very calm and tranquil state. I came out, I apologized for delaying him, and I gave him the documents. And I found that if I work with this practice every day, my being becomes gentler. I become naturally more compassionate. So I want to invite you all to do the Naikan practice. And Unmesha has just requested for the 3 questions. So Sukriti, maybe you can just write these down again on the chat. What have I received from you or that person? What have I received from that person? Second question, what have I given to them? And the third is, what troubles and difficulties have I caused that person? I'd like to end today's sharing with a very important statement from the worldwidely famous psychiatrist Fitzgibbons, who says forgiveness may be as important to the treatment of emotional and mental disorders as the discovery of sulfur drugs and penicillin was to the treatment of infectious diseases. I hope that has been useful for all of you. I can't hear you, Sukriti.
Thank you. That was excellent. We'll try to take a couple of questions. I know these people have had their hand raised. Kalpana, go ahead. Kalpana, go ahead.
I have not asked for the question. I just raised hand when she said something to do. That's why I raised the hand.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. It's a
Nilima,
wonderful talk.
Nilima, did you have a question, or Shruti? No. I'm seeing
Yes.
a lot of hands raised. So go ahead, Shruti.
So my question was, when I was in the process of forgiving at the end of my divorce, and I walked up to my husband and said that I am leaving you for infidelity, and why did you do that to me? You know, and was there a problem between us? He said, we never had a problem. It was not for you. It was for me. I don't know how am I supposed to take this as an answer, because I was deeply hurt. I was so hurt that I signed the paper without, without even thinking twice. My hands didn't shiver.
Yeah, so what happens in such cases is that we start looking for or hoping to find completion by finding an answer to the question, why did it happen? And why is an answer we will never find. The important thing is that somewhere in your mind, you believe that if you found the answer to why, then it could give you closure. And you have chosen to keep yourself on the cross till you get closure. The closure is that he found maybe someone else to lead his life with, or the fact that he didn't want to stay with you anymore. Is that not enough for you? Are you still carrying the pain, Shruti?
I no, there's no pain per se, but just because we were talking about forgiveness today, it came to me because that time I was looking for an answer. Answer, no, but the only thing was that how do I forgive and move on in my life? I don't want to clinch to him. I don't remember him anymore.
Okay, so I hope you're going to use the method, maybe the 4D process, which is the deep dive, to take the decision that I don't want to suffer and I don't want to spend any more precious time of my life trying to find answers to why this happened.
Oh, definitely.
ठीक
Thank
The next question, Niru, if you have a question, please go ahead. Niru? Okay, we have a question that comes up quite a lot. How do you let go? And sometimes, especially when people have committed, like what you described, murders, crimes, hate crimes, how do you actually find it to forgive them also? Because what do you find that anything that is redeeming about them?
We all believe that we have never committed any heinous crimes, but we forget that many of us who are old souls may have lived many lifetimes as warriors. We may have hurt others. We may have done such terrible things. And that is the part of us where I explained about the way our mind functions, where we exaggerate our own goodness also, that I'm better than other people, so I couldn't have done anything bad. And it becomes really hard for me to accept that maybe this is a redemption of my own karma. Maybe this is something that is coming from a very remote life. Maybe I have developed a lot of goodness in the previous lifetimes and I've done a lot of spiritual purification. But it's possible that I've chosen this lifetime to go through or to remove or to neutralize some very big unresolved karma in the past.
So I think there are two questions. Niru has one and Minakshi. I'm asking both of them to unmute. Please do. Niru, please go ahead. Niru, go ahead.
यस नमस्कार मैम मैम मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि जो लोग हमारी लाइफ में हमें छोड़ के चले गए हैं और कुछ हर्ट्स उनके हमने लिए हुए हैं उनको तो हम फॉरगिवनेस से कर देते हैं, उसको खत्म भी कर देते हैं, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं कई बार बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग होते हैं जो कहीं ना कहीं किसी सेकेंडरी गेन के कारण उस आदमी के साथ चिपके हुए होते हैं और वो उस ह्यूमिलेशन को या उस हर्ट को भी टॉलरेट करते रहते हैं, तो एज अ रेगुलर प्रैक्टिस और छोड़ भी नहीं पाते क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं किसी के बच्चे इन्वॉल्व होते हैं या कुछ और चीजें होती हैं या कई बार कुछ लेडीज पढ़ी लिखी नहीं होती हैं तो उनकी एक ये बन जाती है, एक नियति बन जाती है उन लोगों के साथ रहना। तो उस समय वो फॉरगिवनेस को कैसे करें जबकि एक ऑब्वियसली उनको दिख रहा है कि मतलब वो ह्यूमिलेट हो रही हैं और हर्ट हो रही हैं और वो छोड़ भी नहीं सकती हैं उसको।
यही कारण है कि मैंने वो केस स्टडी अपनी किताब से पढ़ा था कि आपके सामने 3 चॉइसेस हैं। अब क्या है कि अगर पास्ट लाइफ टेंडेंसी है कि हम कमजोर हैं और सेल्फ रिलायंट नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, तो पहले हम फॉरगिवनेस प्रैक्टिस करेंगे डेली नाइकान प्रैक्टिस करके। हो सकता है कि वो इंसान बहुत खराब है पर उसमें कुछ ऐसी चीजें हैं कि वो तुम्हें फाइनेंशियली सपोर्ट कर रहा है या कुछ तुम्हारे लिए कर रहा है, तो नाइकान प्रैक्टिस कीजिएगा। और उसको तब तक हमने, जो मैंने अपना एक फॉरगिवनेस डिस्क्राइब किया था कि होपोनोपोनो करके, सामने इमेजिन करके, वो वाला प्रैक्टिस आप डेली कीजिएगा, ताकि आप धीरे धीरे आपके अंदर एक स्ट्रेंथ आनी शुरू हो जाएगी, जब आप डिसाइड कर सकते हैं कि क्या हम इनको छोड़ सकते हैं अब कि नहीं। अगर हम इनको डिवोर्स नहीं कर सकते, अगर हमने उनके साथ ही जीना है, तब भी तो दो चॉइसेस हैं कि रोज मर मर के जी सकते हैं, या अपने मन को, अपने गुस्से को, लाइक आई सेड, यू ट्रांसफॉर्म एंगर इनटू फेथ। तो प्रभु के साथ जुड़ना शुरू कर दो, अपने गुस्से को प्रभु की तरफ डायरेक्ट कर दो और वहां से अपनी शक्ति प्राप्त करें। यू
बहुत अच्छा
अंडरस्टैंड?
मैम, बहुत अच्छे से, यस मैम, बहुत अच्छे से आंसर दिया मैम। बट एक छोटी सी बात और पूछनी थी, जो नाइकॉन प्रैक्टिस है उसकी कोई हमें वीडियो वगैरह कहीं किसी पे मिल सकती है प्रैक्टिस करने के लिए, या जो ये 3 क्वेश्चंस बताए हैं इसी को ही हमें इंट्रोस्पेक्ट करना है अपने आप में?
इसी को इंट्रोस्पेक्ट करना है आपने,
जी
ये जवाब आपके अंदर से आएगा। देखो सवाल 3 ही हैं, but if you want, I
जी
am
मैम।
practice, I'm hoping by next week I will have a video on my channel on the Nikon practice so that I can make it easier for you, तो आप मेरे YouTube वीडियो पे भी वो देख पाएंगे।
Last
थैंक
Next
यू सो
question
मच मैम, बहुत अच्छे
from
से आंसर दिया
Parveen.
आपने,
Yeah,
थैंक यू।
go ahead.
Parveen, yeah,
Go ahead.
Can I?
yeah.
Myself, Meenakshi?
Whose
Go
name?
ahead, Parveen.
Yeah. Hi, Suzy. See, I just wanted to know, कि, we have made mistakes, and I have, I have forgiven from my heart. Uh, I have moved forward, but because of my mistake, the others who have seen me making the mistake keep me away. So how should I handle that? Because the person with who I made the mistake is no more, but I have forgiven him, and it's resolved in my mind. But the people have watched me making the mistake. Their behavior is not good. So what?
I understand. So my suggestion to you is twofold. आप दो काम करेंगे. One is you start beaming love to them every day. When you sit in your sadhana or your morning meditation practice, just imagine that your heart is opening up and that you are sending them a lot of love energy, which will start opening their heart towards you. So that is the first practice that you're going to engage in. And keep doing it every day. Don't put a limit to it कि मैंने 40 दिन करना है या 60 दिन करना है. No, just do it every single day. Just send them blessings and love. And do the Ho'oponopono prayer, the 4 sentences, do it with them. Please forgive me. I am sorry. I thank you. I love you. Just do these 2 practices. You will be surprised at the kind of turnaround that you will see. They will start accepting you.
Well, thank you, Suzy. I mean, as always, unfortunately, we run out of time, and I ask for forgiveness for everyone to whom question we have not been able to get to. But Suzy does have her channel. There are lots of videos there. Please do write on our Facebook page. We'll try to get answers to everything. Suzy, thank you so much, so much, with gratitude for sharing your learnings with us, your thoughts with us. Any last tips before we sign off for today?
I'm just going to say that if each one of us starts embracing this, I am sure that we will reduce the amount of violence and terror on the planet. Do it to make your personal lives happier and harmonious. Do it so that we can exit this pandemic state and bring forth a better world for our children, please.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. What an enlightening talk. I think it has given us so much to think about. With that, I wish you all a good night. And thank you, Suzy, once again for being here on Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you so much, Sukriti. I have thoroughly enjoyed being here on this platform. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you soon.